Hi guys, and welcome to the official catch-up. Today it's myself, Chris, and I'm joined by Ben. How you doing, Ben?
Not too bad, sir. How are you?
Good. Another Sunday recording for the catch-up.
So,
It's a bit different today. We're obviously going to turn our focus towards the West of Scotland League, and there's obviously no games at the moment, Ben, but there has been obviously a few talking points over the last few days. Certainly, we'll start with the Scottish government regulations. We thought maybe the East of Scotland and West of Scotland would be affected, but I believe they would have been. Tier 6 and 7 would have been, but they obviously fought for it at the SFA meeting. Am I right in saying that?
yeah, so I think originally what happened was the Scottish government guidance came out saying that all football essentially wasn't professional. I think was the phrase they used for over 18 should be cancelled. So that affected your youth teams at 18, 19, 20, even 21, I think. And obviously that meant that it looked like tier 6, tier 7. I think there probably was a discussion around about tier 5 as well, but I think the fact that tier 5 are represented in the professional game board kind of made that quite easy for them to decide that tier 5 was classed as professional. Now, the tier 6, tier 7 thing was, it looked like we weren't going to be going ahead, and then there seemed to be a bit of a fight from the West region committee with the SFA and the government to try and prove that we were professional. I think that's the word that's been used a lot. I think professional refers to players who receive payment for services for sport. So certainly a lot of teams in the West are paying players, whether that's expenses or proper wages. So that was fought, and it was decided that the league would go ahead. So we're quite lucky in that regard that we did get the go ahead to actually play.
Yeah, and then obviously the following day on Friday, it was the big, obviously the vote between the teams in the West, whether the start of the season would go ahead on October 24th. 36 teams said yes, 31 said no. Very close thing, but the league will start on October 24th. Quite obviously, there's a lot of issues surrounding this for a lot of teams. 14 teams have said that they're going to withdraw from the inaugural league season. 4 that we know about already, I think Kilburnie, Cumnock Juniors, Whitlets, Victoria and Petershill are the 4 that I've spotted. Is there any other that I've missed out there, Ben?
I think Dross and Winton Rovers are a team, potentially Cumnock have definitely said that they won't be playing in the Prem. I believe there's 5 teams in the Prem, the West Premiership, that have said they will withdraw. Nothing has been formally confirmed beyond Kilburnie and Cumnock, but from what I hear in the kind of the message boards and Twitter and things like that Talbot and Pollock are 2 of those teams. And certainly if you look at a lot of social media with Talbot fans and people involved in Talbot, there certainly looks like that Talbot are one of the teams. So I'm not too sure about the other 9 going down the conferences, but certainly there's 5 in the Prem, which makes then the Premiership look completely different if the 5 teams pull out. Not surprised personally about the teams that have pulled out. They were very vocal about it leading up to the vote and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think for a lot of teams, it's like, let's adapt and let's just get on with it and try and get playing. The thing that I think that strikes me is that we're talking about trying to delay a season or not have a season completely, but we don't really know what's going to happen in the next few months. It could be bad, it could be okay. Do you know what I mean? There's two sides to the coin. You might start October, and then by the end of November, you could have fans on your ground. Restrictions lifted on changing rooms. I believe, just going back to the changing rooms thing quite quickly, there was discussions about the leagues being able to put some sort of proposal towards the SFA and prove that your changing rooms can be used properly in the social distance manner and safely and cleanly and all that kind of stuff. So that's a developing situation that might adapt. And it seems to be 2 things. I think fundamentally it's down to money, isn't it? I think that's probably one of the main concerns for a lot of teams, and quite right. The finances, having no fans is going to affect you. As an extra cost incurred for getting to games and things like that, and having put games on without any fans probably is. But I think it's important we start.
Yeah, and obviously taking the statements out from each team. On face value, I think it's reasonable. Obviously, I think had fans been allowed, like, I don't think there'd be any teams withdrawn. The financial thing, obviously, being able to pay players. Obviously, there is a concern over, as you mentioned, obviously with the changing rooms and whatnot, of players' health and well-being, if you will. But there's been, I've heard, obviously, it's I don't want to say it's typical of the West, but there is a lot of sort of back and forth between people involved in the league. I have to take things on face value. I don't know the behind the scenes, obviously, like say Kilburnie and Cumnock and whatever, but on face value, I think it's reasonable that their concerns are reasonable. I don't know if there's any more to what behind the scenes of what's been said, but certainly lack of fans and player health and safety or whatever would be a concern if you were running a club, I would say.
Yeah, so I mean, I look at that from obviously a different point of view. Our club were very, very keen to play. I think it's up to the clubs as individuals is to work out a plan and try and prepare for a season, certainly without fans, without change rooms. There seems to be this comment, and I've seen it a few times this morning on social media, around not having like a duty of care or a concern for the players' welfare. Now, two things I want to add to that. Firstly, players at most clubs should have been consulted, whether regards they wanted to play purely on a health and safety basis, whether that's with COVID or with lack of showers and changing facilities. Speaking to players yesterday, there certainly seems like a widespread agreement that they want to play football. If the choice is no football, or football without changing rooms, then those guys want to play football. That's the fundamental thing. It seems to be mentioned quite a lot. So I think the idea that it seems like there's been kicking about that there's no duty of care is rubbish. I don't like that at all from clubs. I absolutely accept if a club feels like that they want to look after players in that way, and a reason for not playing, absolutely. But don't put it onto other clubs that make out that they're not caring about their players. The second thing about the money absolutely is a massive concern. So I think it's up to the clubs to discuss with their players whether or not those guys want to play for either no money or expenses or what. Certainly, again, speaking to some guys yesterday, a lot of players that I've been speaking to have said that their football money isn't money that they use for like to be their life wages and top up their their salary, pay the bills. It's extra money they get in their pocket for playing football because they're good at it, and they get it by extra dough. But most people have proper jobs, full-time jobs that pay a wage that they'll be able to rely on. Any football money's extra. So some guys might want to play without money, some won't, and again, that's absolutely fine if you don't want to play. But every club has to take their own situation individually, and you can't lambast one club over another because they either do want to play or don't want to play. I don't think that's right. I think clubs, as I say, have to kind of pivot and just sort of try and adapt to the situation and try and do things to maybe make money that'll bring in some fundraising or things like that you can do. I mean, there's opportunities there that if you have a smart kind of thinking club, you can probably start doing the live streams and bring in some cash via live stream. You can maybe have some sort of things like a kind of donation efforts. There's certainly been clubs that have done that already. And but I think the thing, if you don't play, is you could potentially put your club at risk because you'll lose players potentially. Because if you decide to withdraw, your guys should be presumably have the right to go and play elsewhere, and they might decide, well, I don't want to play for Team A because they've withdrawn, so I can go and play with Team B, but I'm not going to get paid for them. I'd rather just play football. So once you let your guys go, you put your club at risk to ever come back. Your fans might drift away. There's a lot of variables that say to me that it's a big risk about not playing, because it comes back to that thing. We don't know for sure what could happen. As I say, we could get to November, December, and fans are back in the door, changing rooms are on, and everything's rosy again. We just don't know. So
yeah,
I think if you start, it's better to start and then see what happens. And because if you decide not to start, then that gives the government and the SFA chance to sort of ignore you and just say put you to the back burner because it's not important. Whereas if you start, you can keep applying that pressure via the media or via your MSPs and your government, etc., to try and get the fans back in and get the changing rooms back on board. So yeah, it's a weird time in the West for sure. But hopefully we'll, as I say, we'll get the season started next week and start with the South Challenge Cup, and then we'll kick on to the league matches.
I think out of all the statements, I think the first one I seen, I think it was the first one out, was by Whitlett's Victoria, and that did generally come across as like, based on completely based on the finance. Obviously, there was other concerns in there, but what you were saying there, obviously about not knowing. I think for maybe the smaller conference teams, I think it's a harder decision for them because we don't know. We don't know when fans are going to be back. They might not have the facilities to obviously do maybe a live stream, or maybe not have the fan base there to have like hundreds of donations or whatever the case may be. So for the two Prem teams, I think it was a wee bit different. Obviously, I think overall all the concerns are all surround the whole thing. Basically, fans not being able to attend the massive one, because that's the one that would obviously get these clubs some money, I would say. Peters Hill is a bit of a different scenario. I don't know. I'm assuming this played a part in it, but obviously they asked the league for a run of away games at the start of the season due to not being able to access Peters Hill Park due to Glasgow Life still being closed due to staff being on furlough. I mean, I've been hearing a lot of this, even in the East, obviously, with the likes of maybe facilities in Edinburgh run by the council. There's clubs have had to sort of rethink about where they're playing or where they're going to train. Is it, what's the sort of situation in the West at the moment with that?
Yeah, I think you're right about Peters Hill. I think they were hopeful they could have a small run of games just till they saw what happens with Glasgow Life. I think Glasgow Life as a company are in bad shape in terms of finances. They obviously run the facility at Peters Hill, where I think Glasgow City, for example, were playing up until this year, and Glasgow City had to move to play, I think, at Clyde. I think it ended up playing at. So yeah, I think it's a difficult one. I think in the current climate, I don't see the problem of having 4, 5, 6 games away from home if that's what you're prepared to do as a club. To effect, can give yourself a chance to actually get a home ground or get the park that you play at open and get through all the facility, get your facilities up and running. So because obviously there'll be a lot of things around kind of risk assessments required to be done to make sure that places are kind of COVID safe sort of thing. So that'll be expected of all clubs, and I think as a club you should be able to back yourself in delivering those what's it called, protocols. So yeah, I think that's the only kind of situation like that. There'll be certainly a few more grounds that are kind of council owned type properties, and I'm not too sure exactly what about other clubs, but every other club I think who so far in that spot are saying they're playing, but we don't know exactly, because obviously we don't know the 14 clubs who have said they're not playing it. It'll come out in the wash eventually when fixtures are made up and league tables are formed, or the situation regarding kind of the league is decided. So because if you lose 14 teams, your league structure is going to have to change, no doubt about it, and your fixture makeup's going to have to change as well. So we'll find out who the clubs are very, very soon, I'm sure.
Yep, and obviously the big talking point, I know it's all big talking points at the moment, but funny enough, I think we talked about this scenario actually, obviously just through DMs and stuff, but promotion and relegation not happening, apart from promotion to the Lowland League, but for conference teams, they pretty much, as it stands, don't have a chance to get into the Premier Division, which I think really pushes teams to maybe not play in the season. That's my point of view on it. I mean, what's the point? I know they can maybe win the Conference A or Conference B or whatever it will be, but what's the point if they can't get into the Premier Division?
Yeah, so I think this one's a real bone of contention, I feel, for the teams in the conference for sure. So I think what originally happened was very early on, before the voting was taking place for the West restart, the West committee did say that they wouldn't punish any team who decided to take a year out. of the league. So instantly, when you do that, I mean that kind of restricts you what you can do in terms of competitive football. Because if you have, say, 5 teams dropping out the Prem, they're expecting next year to come back into the Prem, which for me, I mean, it's fine. However, you have to allow the conference teams to have the incentive. But by making the statement that they wouldn't punish any club for not playing, you back yourself into that corner quite quickly and make any new league structure quite hard to make competitive. Because I think the phrase been used a few times is it's going to turn to glorified friendlies, which are probably right, to be honest. It's probably going to be that if there's nothing to play for. Apart from conference champions, whatever you want to call it, that's the only real thing that you can effectively have. I don't. For me, I think it would make sense if the conference champions, at the very least, get to play in the Prem next season. I think that would be fair, but I don't think that'll happen because of the statement about lack of punishment or no punishment for any team who opts out of playing. So it makes it very, very hard.
Yeah. And excuse me if I'm being a wee bit too harsh here, but my point of view is they're kind of, in effect, punishing the conference teams that can play. And I don't think the clubs had a lot of decision in this. I think it was a league decision, as you said, obviously.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of the focus and discussion to begin with was around protecting the clubs who don't want to play it originally, and the argument was then countered by, well, what about the teams who do want to play? How do we look after them? Because there was teams obviously that were very much in the position of we want to start this season, and there was obviously quite a number of teams who didn't want to start. But I think you're right. I think it's difficult. Originally, I think the discussion actually was believed to have no promotion and relegation at all. However, it was cleared up at a later date that there would be promotion to the Lowland League for any West Premier team. Now, obviously, that relies on a licence. And due to the current situation with money and coronavirus, etc., I'm not too sure how many clubs will actually be able to go for the licence. I think that'll be something that will probably come out in the wash later. There might only be 1 or 2 clubs who firstly have a chance to win the league and then B, a chance to actually get promoted because they have the licence. So I think you have to get the licence by February of 2021. So 2021 you have to have your licence in play. And I guess it depends where you are in the league at that point. If you think you've got a chance to win the league at that point, then you might go for your licence so you can get the chance of playing the promotion against the Lowland League, the playoff against the Lowland League side, or the South Scotland and East Scotland teams, and then obviously the Lowland League if you're successful there. So I think it's a difficult one. How do you fix it? I'm not really sure, to be honest. I think you have to have some sort of incentive. For me, I think there has to be some sort of incentive to win your conference or certainly win the league or stay up. Because I guess the other thing is we were looking at a 7-team relegation in the Premiership originally, with 7 teams coming up from the conferences. It's the league champions from the conferences coming up as well. So it's a weird one. I don't really know what we do in that regard. I think the other thing, obviously, going back to May, April time, we were all said to have conferences across the board and no Tier 6 level, or certainly no Premiership at Tier 6. But the SFA asked for that had to happen. So it kind of made things difficult for the West region to have to create a Prem and then make the conferences in behind. Whereas I think we'd have probably ran conferences across the board and had your Prem teams mixed in with the conferences and probably had 4 conferences set up. So because of that, you've got to have a Prem. There's no debate about that. So the idea that there's another method, I'm not too sure. But if you have got 15 teams in the Prem, I would probably bring up a couple, maybe 3 from the conferences, and then balance it out that way and run kind of an 18 Prem with like a 18 and 18 conference down below, and have kind of relegation from the Prem and conference champs coming up to the following year. But I think it'll depend on what they see is possible with that, because of that statement they made at the very beginning.
Yeah, and I always feel, we were quite harsh on obviously the SPFL, and not allowing Kelty and Brewer Rangers the chance. Are we being a wee bit hypocritical at this stage? Not given, no, we always go on about like the sort of pyramid, or the pyramid should be, it should be a pyramid, but we're essentially stopping Tier 7 West of Scotland teams from getting promoted at the moment. To me, that's not a pyramid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's not great, is it? It's difficult. I think when you going back to it, I've said already, but the idea that they make the statement that those teams are getting punished, it really makes things difficult to have a competitive season below Tier 6, to be honest. I think hopefully maybe there'll be discussions that will take place. I think most teams who have indicated they want to withdraw have until I think tonight, which is Sunday night, to contact the league and say they either want to play or they don't. If they don't contact the league by tonight, take that as them withdrawing from the league for a season. So then I think that the week ahead will be discussions about kind of league structure and how that will play out. Hopefully they'll come to some sort of kind of agreement around promotion relegation, even if it's a small promotion relegation, like your conference champions go up, and your bottom two teams go down from the Prem, something like that. I think most clubs would probably be okay with that. To be honest, I think those who are playing even in the Prem would happily take that risk of potentially getting relegated from 2 spots or maybe 3 spots, depending on how it plays out. But you've got to have something in there, simple as that. I think you've got to bring something in, but very, very difficult, I think, to actually organise.
Yeah, and obviously looking at the East of Scotland, there's no teams withdrawn for the season yet anyway. So I think it's easier, obviously, to say, promotions and relegations are obviously still viable because nothing's really changed in terms of the league structure. But one thing, just on the note on obviously on the promotion and relegation, Cartgern juniors have kind of hinted at possible legal action if they don't have the right to promotion in terms of where they are in the conference at the moment. So I'm assuming they're obviously going to go ahead, but say they're top of the league and they don't get promoted, then it's not going to look great in terms of if one of the clubs take legal action against the league.
Yeah, I think any conference team are quite really upset about that, especially if they want to play. I think, as you mentioned, the teams kind of at the lower end of the conferences with smaller crowds and fan bases, etc., and maybe lower income streams certainly deserve the chance to get up, because I mean, if you do get promoted or you do get your place in the Prem for next season, you're probably going to bring in more money, more gate money, things like that into your team if we do get fans back in. So that's how we sold at the beginning of the discussions, that you'll play a conference for one season and there'll be 7 spots up for grabs to get into the Prem, and the Prem is obviously it's seen as the golden ticket. You're playing against bigger teams with bigger fan bases, and probably sponsorship opportunities are probably greater because you're in a kind of bigger, more publicised league as well. So yeah, I quite right. I don't know the legal actions that is the answer. Personally, that might be quite drastic. I think adults we can discuss it around the table in one of these Zoom meetings, and have a chat about it club to club and just try and come up with a plan, or obviously work out a way to give someone the chance to actually have a competitive season, because I guess if you don't have promotion relegation, there's no real competitive edge in the season.
Yeah. And finally, do you think there's a possibility of even more teams in 14 if potentially more conference teams withdrawing if promotions is just completely off the cards?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible, because I think what you got to ask yourself the question: what's the point in playing if you're nothing to play for? So clubs would be quite right. But I think if you do play, I think you put your club at risk quite a bit. So maybe clubs are looking at it from that point of view, that if we start to we decide to withdraw, all our players can leave the club, and the buzz around the club perhaps kind of dies down a little bit, but amongst your community, and you might find that you get to kind of, let's just say, November, December, and fans are back in and everything's rosy again. So who really knows what will happen? So it's certainly a gamble for any club. I think that's a certain. It's an absolute gamble for any team to be involved in this season. But I think you've got to do what's right by your own club and go forward that way.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I agree 100%. So I think we've covered everything today, Ben. We'll obviously get into plugs. We'll let you go first.
Yeah, just send me on Twitter. It's at Mr. Ben Grant on Twitter. Send away abuse my way.
And I'm at Rampant FM on Twitter. Official Catchup is at Official Catchup. Lowland League Catchup on Facebook. Official.catchup on Instagram, and pretty much everywhere you can find a podcast, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, just absolutely everywhere. Well, we had a wee chat about the West. Obviously, we're looking forward to the West of Scotland, the season opener on the 24th of October. Obviously, we've got the South Challenge Cup, or the Soccer Shop Challenge Cup, if you will, to begin with. But you're looking forward to actually, getting down and dirty with the podcast?
Absolutely, I think it's been cool talking about kind of what's been going on, and kind of obviously we've been discussing different things and as news kind of broke. But it'll be great to get involved in actually talking about the teams on the park, and something I think I dawned on me last night driving home from the game. We were playing Port Glasgow yesterday in a friendly. Been very, very lucky over the last 6 or 7 weeks. Been able to be involved in football and get down to matches and see games and be around training and all these kind of things. So I'm looking forward to the competitive stuff starting. Obviously, the Soccer Shop Challenge Cup starts next Saturday. That's our first chance to go and play an East of Scotland team. We're through in Socky in the first round. So I'm really looking forward to go there, seeing Beechwood Park and stuff. I've never been there before as well. So it's another ground to tick off the list, and we'll get stuck into it, because for us, for me, I've seen a lot of good stuff of obviously what's happening in the West, but I've not had a lot of dealings with the East of Scotland or the Lowland League myself at all. So it's going to be great to get involved and find out a lot more about these teams and keep up to date with what's going on across the tier 5 and below.
Brilliant. And when we just a note to anyone that's listening with Ben, and I think Moza at the moment will obviously be running the West of Scotland catch up. I'm quite excited. Obviously, my focus will probably be on the Lowland League and perhaps East of Scotland. But I wish you guys well. I'm obviously be listening in when I'm editing through it. I'm really excited about the West of Scotland League. Obviously, it's a wee bit sad and unfortunate at the moment with clubs pulling out and whatever. But I think we've touched on it. Each club has to do what's best by what they know and for themselves, obviously. But obviously, we'll keep everyone updated, yourself and Moza, Ben.
Indeed. Yeah, it's going to be great.
And we'll see you all soon, hopefully.